Holly, if you can hear me in the council chambers, we can go live, please.
Big echo, big echo. Big echo, Leanne.
Does mine get turned off? On my.
Oh, that's
Is it my iPad? Should I turn the mute off on my screen or what?
call from 09130255000021.
Holly, can you confirm that you can hear us in council chambers and you're ready to go live, please?
Okay. We'll call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to our electronic ad hoc COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing, and all the councillors who are members of this ad hoc committee are participating electronically. Councillors, if at any time you want to speak to a matter, please raise your hand and identify yourself. Please keep your devices muted until called upon to speak so that we can avoid feedback from our devices. And Stevie's going to do roll call.
John Strickland.
Here.
John Strickland. Sue Foxton.
Present.
Sue Foxton. Helen Jowett. Helen Jowett.
Here.
Carl Kiefer.
Here.
Carl Kiefer. Jeff Lawrence. Jeff Lawrence.
Here.
Karen Redmond. Michael Harris. Michael Harris.
Okay. I believe that they'll both be joining us shortly, so we'll move on. Any declarations of pecuniary interest under the municipal conflict of interest act? Seeing none, approval of minutes. You all received a copy of the minutes from June 25th meeting. Any changes? Okay. If none, it's moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Kiefer, that the ad hoc COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee approve the minutes of the June 25th, 2020 as presented. Can we vote? That's approved. Thank you. So we have, you were sent the information in your package. So the information in your package. So now we're going to have a brief presentation from Regier.
Jeff, we're having trouble hearing you there with you have a real bounce back there, a hollow sound.
Yeah, I don't know if my screen should be turned, this should be turned off. Or...
We need you. We need your audio.
Okay. So maybe it's my earbuds. I keep getting this feedback.
So do I.
Technical difficulties. Also, so it's Robert Regier, Commissioner of Planning, Development, and Legislative Services, and Michelle Sergi, Director of Community Planning.
Thank
and
you.
This is regarding red tape reduction. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, Chair Lawrence. I've asked Michelle to provide a few slides that give a little bit more detail regarding the discussions we had last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, about work underway to streamline the planning approvals process. Michelle has been working directly with the heads of planning for all the area municipalities and is coordinating some of that discussion regarding including a Lean Six Sigma process regarding the subject.
Yeah.
And she's also been coordinating work internally to develop a business case for a development tracking system that would give us some good data regarding performance metrics. And facilitating the work in the last several months to adjust to COVID-19 and with the
Okay, then I'll
outcome
do
being
it.
pretty significant improvement in
Trying to figure out my head.
process times, just simply by virtue of the of moving to electronic document sharing. So with that, I'd like to ask Michelle to share her screen and walk us through some slides that describe the work underway in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks, Rod. Just want to confirm that everyone can see the slide presentation.
Can everybody see it?
I'm getting some nods, so,
Yep.
so I'm going to move forward. So thanks for the opportunity to come in and talk at your committee. I'm very pleased to be here to talk specifically about the subdivision approval process and development tracking. So the presentation is going to be a review of the subdivision process, as well as a Lean Six Sigma review that we carried out back in 2016. Some of the actions that were identified and implemented, as well as provide information about the potential benefits and efficiencies that can be gained through a new development tracking system. So I just wanted to quickly go over the regional role with respect to development applications. So we do have a provincial role, so we deal with provincial requirements through a memorandum of understanding with the province. And so we're responsible for ensuring that matters of provincial interest are adequately addressed through the planning process. In addition, there's regional requirements, both as a landowner, regional roads, and our regional official plan that we have to ensure are dealt with through that process. We function as both an approval authority and a commenting agency. So with respect to official plan amendments, draft plans of subdivision, draft plans of condos, we are for the most part the approval authority with the exception of subdivision and condos for the City of Kitchener. We also provide comments on all of those applications as well, and we are also responsible for commenting on zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, severances, and site plans in a limited capacity, specifically to when they're occurring on regional roads. So on the screen, there's sort of these points that generally describe the large buckets or the large components related to the subdivision approval process, focusing on draft plan approval. So there is the pre-submission consultation. That's where an applicant or a property owner comes in with a concept. It's circulated, and we determine all of the background studies and requirements for them to submit an application for it to be processed. So there's that component to the process. Then there is the application submission. Under the Planning Act, we have 30 days to make sure that they've met the requirements that were set out during the pre-submission consultation and deem an application complete. Then the application, once it's deemed complete, moves into circulation. We circulate applications for 21 days. We receive those comments and consolidate them, synthesize them, and review them, and then we provide them to the applicant. At that point in time, it's up to the applicant to review those comments and revise any of their submissions to address those comments. There will be a couple of iterations of that, these two components of the process, the circulation and the resubmission. To a certain extent, it depends on the initial quality of the submission, clarity of the comments that are provided. Then we get to a point where all of the agencies that are requiring conditions can provide sign-off, and then we approve the draft plan of subdivision. That, of course, is delegated to staff, which has proven to be quite efficient in terms of that process. So the reason I have that one area identified sort of in a red block is to sort of highlight that this is the area that tends to be the more complicated components of the plan. It's the opportunity for the most efficiencies, but it's also the portion of the process where we have less control over some of the components that can lead to delays. So certainly we have some control over commenting. We don't have control over all of the agency comments and their timing, but we also don't have control over the quality of the submission that we receive and the response to the comments. And so to a certain extent, the ownership for this process lies both with the region and the agencies as well as the applicant.
Okay.
So just moving on to the Lean Six Sigma process that we went through back in 2016. The objective was to identify opportunities for efficiencies and process harmonization in the existing subdivision approvals process. A Kaizen event was carried out in the fall of 2016. So that is 4 or 5 intensive days where you're reviewing process. You're trying to determine what the current state is. You're trying to look at who are providing inputs to that process, who are the customers on the other side of each component of the process, and what is your desired future state? What do you want to look at? What do you want it to look like coming out? So where are those efficiencies? And so then you determine the actions that you want to implement. So this process was done internally. The challenge with some of these Kaizen events is you can't make them too big if you want to continue to make them relevant and to make them effective. And so we scoped it to just internal partners. So we had transportation, water services, legal, GRTA, others that provide comments on development applications internally to try to get our house in order as we went through this process. And so there were a couple of challenges in addition to not being able to include the agencies in the area municipalities. But when it came to carrying this out, we were a little bit data poor. And part of that stems from this need for a new development tracking system is, you know, we can easily tell you when an application comes in the door and when it's approved, but we can't tell you about all those steps in between. So I can't tell you how long it's spent with an individual agency for them to produce comments. I can't tell you how long, you know, if we had comments on a traffic impact study, how long that study spent with the consultant before it came back to us. So understanding when we had ownership of the file versus when an applicant had ownership of the file is really key to understanding some of these efficiencies and understanding some of the timing associated with getting to approval. And so we didn't have a lot of information. We did do some digging into the files to come up with some representative samples, but it was really challenging from that perspective. And as a result, we weren't able to identify KPIs, specific KPIs related to the improvements. But we did nonetheless identify those actions and try to move forward with those improvements. The other challenge was that this was our first time through the process. And we didn't necessarily have all of the resources that we needed in order to implement some of the actions fully. And that can be financing, that can be IT support, that could be staff time. So staff are all have full positions and full responsibilities, and then asking them to work on some of these implementation matters could prove to be a little bit challenging in terms of trying to move them forward. So that being said, we did come up with a series of actions. And what we did do is we took each of the actions and we assigned a staff champion to them and deadlines for implementation. And the way we tracked that was we we held bi-weekly meetings. And so we went through the action list, we reviewed progress associated, we made decisions on how we were going to move forward and harmonize items. And that bi-weekly meeting actually continues today. And it's morphed from sort of that action-specific drive to more of a continuous improvement, where staff continue to come forward and say, I have an idea as to how we could further improve the process. You know, how do you feel about implementing this? And then we have a discussion, and if it's going to improve the process, then that's something we'll certainly look at, assign someone to it, and have that implemented. So some of the actions that we moved forward with were standard operating procedures related to pre-submission consultation, circulations, noise studies, and condo exemptions. We developed and updated report guidelines. So for example, the terms of reference, so for those background submissions that are part of the or background studies. An example would be the one we related to environmental impact studies that was updated. We started to move towards digital application submissions and circulations, and where we could, we made headway on this. But there were some folks and agencies that were entrenched and really liked their paper copies. They were pretty married to them. So it became difficult, but we did move that forward as much as we possibly could in terms of the digital submissions and the digital circulations. We identified backups for all development files to ensure that there was never a gap in service, whether an agency was contacting us, an area municipality, or a client. But one of the bigger recommendations that we really weren't able to move forward with, but we're working on it now, is to migrate to a single database related to development tracking. So this continuous improvement mindset also lends itself to taking some of the lessons learned through this process and applying it to some of our other types of applications. So whether it's an OPA or a ZBA, we've been able to apply some of those efficiencies to those processes as well. And the one thing that I will say is that because we sort of have this mindset and because we've been through this process, we set up a pilot project for one of the teams, the corridor planning team, where they did go fully digital, not this past January, the January prior. And they are completely paperless. So they provide comments digitally, they circulate digitally. So we've made some great headway. And as a pilot project, there was a lot of lessons learned. And all of this set us up really well for when we had to move very quickly to a virtual environment and a work from home environment. So we were able to take those lessons learned and fairly seamlessly move into that virtual environment. Now, we had a lot of help. We didn't do that alone. We had a lot of support from IT, finance, others. But the benefit was that we knew what we needed. We knew what we were asking for, and we could ask for that help and fairly seamlessly move it forward. So that covers off sort of that Lean Six Sigma process. What we've done
just one second, Michelle. If you get,
sure.
Did you say there's some hands up? I can't see. I was going to wait to the end, but if someone has a question, is there somebody that
I can wait to the end.
Okay. All right. Okay. Carry on, Michelle.
Okay. So like this is sort of our first pilot project. Since this time, we have taken our corridor permits or our access permits through the Lean Six Sigma process. We're taking brownfield applications through this process as well to try to find additional efficiencies. And we've also, I believe, Rod, at your last meeting, made you aware of that joint Lean Six Sigma process, where now we're bringing in the area municipalities in order to try to harmonize the process with them as well. And so it's a continuous process that we've embarked on, and we're pretty committed to it at this point in time.
Okay.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the development tracking system. I know there was some interest in what types of efficiencies or what it could actually look like. And there were some questions about the Perry Group. So more locally, the Perry Group has worked with York Region, Peel, and Halton in terms of implementing their development tracking systems. Some have purchased already made systems, and York, for example, created their own in-house. So they've got a variety of experience in terms of municipal sector and helping them implement these systems. So the business case is really what's going to help us evaluate those options and try to determine what type of tracking system we want to implement or that they would propose that we implement, as well as help us understand what those efficiencies are in terms of managing the development review process and coordinating. But to give you a better sense of the system, it's a true single track development where you would look at all of the life cycles associated with development planning. So it would be cradle to grave. You would be able to understand each and every component and each and every study associated with it. It would be geo-referenced. It would have a public-facing component so that the public could check in on applications at any given time, as well as a self-service portal for the development for the applicants so that they could see where they were in the process and what they were waiting for. So it's a very transparent system. So, but it doesn't also just have to be about development tracking. It can be a true corporate resource. So it can be all property-related information, and it would allow users to consume information on a single platform and reduce that it takes to search things or do multiple searches, look up paper files, historic files, go to archives. The challenge right now is that we have on development planning a lot of databases that we know of where we're all storing very, very similar information, but in a disjointed way. And so just the ability to harmonize those systems would be an incredible gain in terms of efficiency and staff time. So it also offers that master record for development applications, so all information in one location. When I refer to development tracking here, our system right now is actually okay at this. We can do some additional sort of cleanup and work to arrive at an overall unit and plan count. So in a lot of cases, we'll talk about housing supply. And I can tell you that at the end of last year, we had 30,000 units in the queue. This will do that in real time and will help us know exactly where we are at any given moment. So, but it also, like I said, helps us understand that process component of the development applications, where we'll understand the different components, when it's with us, when it's in the applicant, how much time things are taking, whether there's a particular agency that is struggling to produce comments so that we can follow up and say, okay, what's going on? Are there too many applications, reduced resources? You know, can we provide you with any support? And it'll also enable us to set up some very clear KPIs in order to sort of keep us moving forward. And there's also the opportunity for integration with the area municipalities. The 3 cities are currently on Amanda. I don't know that that's the software that we would end up, or the tracking system that we would end up using. It's really, really good for things like development permits or any kind of permit or license. It's more challenging on the planning application side, which is almost more of a project management approach. So we're looking for something that marries really well with both components. But something that is critical is that we be able to integrate with our system so that we can send comments and information and applications back and forth seamlessly. For those municipalities that don't have access to these systems, there could be that opportunity where they could piggyback on our system and we'd be able to provide that support to them as well. So
Okay.
I know that some people had one question as to what it could look like. So this is the public facing component from Peel, where it lists all the property information and you're able to easily find the development application information, click on it, download it, receive it, review it. So, and that's everything.
Excellent. Okay, and I think we're being joined. Okay, no problem. Okay, we do have a question. Sean, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks, Michelle, for that presentation. There's a lot of material in there, and I guess I have a couple of questions. I'm just kind of not sure where to start. I guess I'll start right from the beginning, because you prefaced your comments by saying there's not a software system in place now where you can accurately determine where an application is at, unless it's with the region. With the region, you can track it, but if it's at the cities or with the GRCA, there's no kind of line of sight into where some of these applications are with an approval processes outside of the region. Is that accurate?
So maybe I could clarify that a little bit. So our development tracking system really tracks when an application comes in the door and when we approve it. So it doesn't track the date I circulate, the date we receive comments back, the date that the applicant revises their submission and resubmits. It doesn't break it down in that way. It's a fairly simple system. And so because it's so old, it's actually a little bit fragile and hard to improve. And so we've been looking for ways to try to break down that information, because that information is critical to understanding where we're losing time.
Okay.
So if it's in the circulation component, you know, that's with us. That's absolutely with us. And we want to know that, and we want to be able to make sure, work with our agencies, work with our partners to try to expedite that process. But if we're waiting for, and this is where it gets complicated, after the initial circulation, we send comments to the developer, and they may have to do revisions related to the planning justification study, their transportation impact study, and EIS. And so their consultants work on it and they send it back to us at different times. It doesn't come back as a single package. So we may have their planning justification study and their EIS very quickly, but we may be waiting for the TIS. I don't know that based on the system that we have. Got
it. So based on that scenario, then what's the average time from application to approval?
So I would say, I'm going to give you a range. So you're probably looking anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years. But what skews the numbers is sometimes we have applications in the system that came in 2002. And so if we are working on the approval or a phase associated with that, that'll skew the numbers. And so it's hard to triage that down so that I can say, I can tell you by looking at the numbers that it's coming down. But we still have some that we're approving that were applied for many years ago and are finally working their way through the process. And without that level of detail, I don't know if those were truly premature applications, whether they changed ownership and they were delayed. Like it's a challenging it's challenging to give you a specific number.
Okay, so, obviously you're subject matter expert on this and I have some idea on how this planning process works. But from a macro level, given the COVID scenario we're dealing with now, and how the region is going to need revenue, and we're going to need development charges, what can we do to identify those applications that are in the process now so we can reduce that approval time from an average of 1.5 to 2.5 years to 6 to 8 months?
So, and some of them are making it through in that time frame. So just that you're aware. I think there's a couple of comments I'd like to make. What I can tell you is we are incredibly busy. So the applications are still coming in, they're still being approved, they're still moving forward. So within the last 2 weeks, we've registered 2 plans of subdivision to the tune of 200 plus units. So development activity from an application perspective is still strong. We haven't really seen a slowdown. I can tell you that the revenue from fees is consistent with what we had estimated for this year. We had, when we first went into COVID, I was asked what I thought the production would be, and I sort of estimated 20% because I didn't know. But what I can tell you is that we're where we said we would be, so with or without COVID. So the level of activity is still very strong, very good. I can tell you that staff are busy.
Right, but that level of activity, using your previous example, has an average approval time of 1.5 years.
Well, and at any given time, staff probably have 20 to 30 applications on their desk at any given time that are in varying states of activity.
Right.
So whether we're actively working on them or not. So what I did do is I did talk to the planning heads this week. So we have a weekly planning heads meeting, and I back and watched the video from the previous committee, and I understood that there was an interest in sort of expediting high priority files.
Yeah.
And so I did, on our call this week, talk to them about the potential for doing that. And there was a general interest in having a broader conversation about the potential to come up with a way to expedite files. But they did offer some cautions associated with it. So one is it has to be a broad conversation, and it absolutely has to include all agencies. So we all have to buy into doing this, and we all have to agree to it. If anyone lags behind, that delays the process. So it has to be part of a broad conversation with many of those involved in the process. There are competing interests at the area municipal levels. So, for example, some of the municipalities are very concerned with affordable housing and want to expedite those types of applications, whereas when you talk to other municipalities, they want to expedite employment type applications. And so anytime you expedite an application, to a certain extent, you're doing it at the expense of anyone else in the queue. And so we've got to be very careful and consistent in terms of what we're doing. So setting up some kind of criteria associated with which ones we're going to expedite, I think would be important and would be part of that discussion. I think the other, there's one other thing they want. Oh, and one of the criteria, one of our biggest challenges on our side, and this is not to deflect in any way, but we can't control the quality of the submission. So we go through that pre-submission consultation process, and we identify what studies, and when they come in with the application, the studies are there, but sometimes they're not necessarily meeting the terms of reference that have been set for those studies. So they come in and they're a little bit weak, or more weak than just that. And so we know that when we get a submission that isn't very strong, that's going to take much longer to go through the process because there's going to be more iterations of comments and revisions in order to get them there. And sometimes we just have people who change course partway through an application. And so, we had a second submission for a subdivision recently where everything seemed fine. It was moving along. They were doing comments, and in their second submission, they suddenly put their stormwater management pond in a provincially significant wetland. We haven't done that since, the early 90s. And so that precipitated a whole series of comments from the GRCA, from the city, from the region, and they were like, why are we getting so many comments? And it's like, really? so sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. So in that example, Michelle, that example, that one to me would not be an expedited process.
Yes.
Right? So like you and the other planning staff across the municipalities have that line of sight into the caliber of those submissions. So what I'm wondering is, in terms of criteria, in terms of priority, would it make sense to ask our coterminous municipalities, what are your top 10 or is it top 5? Without any written criteria at this point, just from their view, what are the top, I don't know what the right number is. Is it 5? Is it 10? What are the top 10 development applications that you would like to see expedited if we could figure out a way to do this?
Sure. That's certainly I can take that to them as part of this conversation, and I can ask them. But the one point coming from them was that we need a commitment on the part of those that we're dealing with, that they're going to provide a high quality submission in order for us to move them forward.
Well, okay. Well, I would say then if they don't have the high quality submission in hand, then it wouldn't be one of their top 10.
That's right.
Right?
I would agree.
Yeah.
That was their thinking as well.
Yeah. So it's got to be ones that are already high quality, processes being initiated. And I know we have all the other municipalities to manage here, but I really like to see on this area a recommendation coming forward out of this committee that we can bring to regional council so we can get the buy-in from all of the municipalities on this expedited approach to development applications. I don't think we can get in all the detail. Sometimes we get bogged down in process. We got to have a fair and transparent process, but we can't talk about this for a year. We need to get this up and running like within a matter of weeks, not months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sean. So I'm just cognizant of time. We've already gone through a half hour and we're hoping to finish at 2:30. I want to welcome Councillor Michael Harris to the call. And we have a number of people with questions. So I would suggest to you that we still have a 32-page slide deck to go through and another presentation on communication. And I want to leave time for questions after this. So please keep that in mind. Councillor, where we go here? Councillor Kiefer.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that, Michelle. Along the same lines of what Councillor Strickland was saying, I think the key to this, of course, is the expedition process. But I was wondering, do we know yet from this Perry group that we're going to be working with, some of the things that they've implemented with other municipalities or regions? Do we know what the expedition process has been, or the savings of time or money, or do we have any idea what they've done, or do we not?
So I don't have specific numbers. That's something I can follow up on, but I can tell you that I've participated in a couple of presentations from York Region, and I know that it was very successful. The uptake by staff was incredibly successful across the corporation, as well as there was efficiencies. They were pretty pleased with the system overall. So I can follow up on that if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, my thinking along the line is that, if they've got something out there already that works, then we need to be doing it, That's what I was thinking there. Anyways, thanks for that.
Okay. All right. Councillor Foxon, did you take your hand down? Okay.
Yeah, I was so Michelle, my concern is duplication. Okay, so an application comes into us, we redo it, we do it against the provincial standards, the regional standards, everything else. Then we send it to you and you redo all that stuff. To me, that is time consuming and a waste of time. So that's one issue I have. The other issue is that we not also have to look at it from our side, but from the people involved with the development, which means the outside planners that are hired, the lawyers that are hired, because a lot of that stuff sits on their desk too, because they know they're making money by the email and I don't know if the developer, who's going to chase those people, Or we say you have to have it done in this amount of time. Or we notify the developer saying, it's not on our desk, it's on, at the township, we document when something comes in and when it goes to someone else. And when it's at someone else's desk and the developer says, well, you're holding it up, we go, no, it's sitting on your desk. And that's important to know, that the holdup a lot of times is not government. Just want to make that point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sean, did you want to push that out, make a motion or recommendation to council on the expedited approval from all municipalities?
Well, I don't know. I'd be happy to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, and maybe, and I'm not sure we're ready for a motion yet because, you know, maybe we need a little more details, but the motion I would have in mind would be that, you know, the committee recommends that the area municipalities and planning approval agencies identify their top 10 development applications to be considered for a fast track approach to approvals.
Well, that's pretty good off the top of your head.
As you can tell by the scene, I have a really big head.
Is there a seconder for that?
Chair, I'd have a quick comment.
Okay. Councillor, go ahead, Councillor. Michael, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I guess, you know, I wouldn't want to just limit it to 10. I don't know if we could just say, you know, be more ambiguous and just say, you know, top development projects per se, in case we get that 11th or 12th one. But I mean, just to follow up on Sue's point, and I know you've added the planning agencies, which would include the GRCA, because I know even some of our own construction projects at the region are going to be potentially even held up because of just the GRCA's process in reviewing this. But, you know, unfortunately, there's also the provincial element of the MOE. I mean, you know, record of site conditions, 8 weeks. And if you don't cross a T or dot an I, it gets resubmitted and it's another 8 weeks. So, I mean, I'd love to see, you know, the Office of Economic Development and MOE and all this provincially be somewhat at least attached on any correspondence to ensure that, you know, it's not another arm of government. You noticed yesterday in our airport master plan committee that now the federal government wants to intervene in an approval process. So, you know, as much as I love the direction we're headed here, there are others that are involved, and we need to make sure that they are on board or at least in receipt of our motion here today.
Okay. Councillor Jowett, and then I see Mr. wants to say something.
Okay, so I'll be really quick here, Jeff. I do want to just let the group know that we've already started doing that at the GRCA. The minute anybody's, you know, listening, and Samantha's already committed. I've discussed with her what we're trying to do with economic recovery, and Samantha's already committed to pulling files if somebody deems them to be high priority. She's already committed to open communication and whatever else she can do to support the initiative here. So it's not even a question. Okay.
Okay, very good. Sue, did you want to make a comment as well?
Just really quickly, Sean, can I ask you, you said high priorities. There's a difference between high priorities and simple development that can go through really, really quickly. And that's the ones that I don't want them sitting. If every T is crossed and I dotted, let's get it through. Let's not have it sit in a pile while we're dealing with the more complex ones or the ones that we deem high priority. Like stage 2 LRT for Cambridge is a high priority. But there's a whole 100 other little ones that we could probably get through and clear the plate really easy. So could you word it a little different? Like, I mean, when you say top 10 high priority, what do we define as that? What do you exactly mean?
Sue, thanks for that. The intent of my motion was for the municipalities to make that determination. So is it high priority because of the number of houses? Is it high priority because it's industrial? Is it high priority because they think they can get it done more quickly? You know, I think those are determinations that the municipalities want to make. You know, if you want to make it high priority or I don't know what the other word would be. Shovel ready comes to mind. I'm not sure, but you know, high priority, or you could say high priority, and or those determined to be of high value to the municipality for whatever reason.
Okay, and I
I think
think of
just
the
to do
word
what
as,
Rod has to say about where we're going with this.
Yeah. Okay, Rod,
Shovel
go ahead.
ready, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I would suggest a couple of things. One is I would suggest that we ask Michelle and the planning heads from the area municipalities to put together a short document that would we could bring back to the committee, which would outline this process and how it might work in a way that operationally straightforward, as well as meets some of our is able to differentiate at the local level priority projects. I don't know, Michelle, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants and committing you here, but that seems like we could do that fairly quickly because Michelle has this open channel of communications with the area planners. The second thing I would suggest is that one of the implications for expediting high priority projects, whether they be residential or commercial, is that it will likely have an adverse impact on other projects which may have been entered the queue sooner. And some of those could be smaller, projects which their proponents would consider to be every bit as legitimate as what we may deem as high priority. So I just want to make the councillors aware that you could have a little bit of a stream of emails in your inbox as a result. We'll try and design.
That hasn't been a problem lately, so no worries there.
Yeah, we'll try and design a system here that works for everybody. And the other thing is that if all the boxes are checked on a proposal, they move through pretty quickly. So when we have a complete set of files, they get turned around in a pretty reasonable amount of time. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
So are you suggesting that we wait till next week? We give you 1 week for Michelle to meet with the planners and come back with some of their thoughts? And
what do you think about that, Michelle?
So I think the challenge is we meet on Wednesdays, so that would be hard for us to sort of really put our minds to it. But I think we can come back and at least have a framework for what this overall discussion could look like. The one comment I wanted to have is it dovetail with what Councillor Foxton was saying, is that there's different types of applications, and some are fairly simple and straightforward. Like, you're at development when you're at site plan, like you're right next to a building permit at that point, versus still going through the draft plan approval process for a subdivision or an official plan amendment process. And so I would be hesitant to put a number of applications to things. I think it's out to their municipalities and say, which are your priorities? Because maybe their site plans and they're all very, very close, or maybe it's 3 really high level, high intense projects that are going to take a lot of time to move forward. And so given that variability, I would be reluctant. I would leave it up to them, which, similar to what Councillor Strickland was saying is, which ones are your priorities and which ones do you want to move forward quickly? The challenge is they might not always align with what the regional priorities may be.
And that's okay. Sean, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I could add on to the motion and direct staff to come back with a plan on how to implement this and report back in 2 weeks' time, whatever it is. And I think just for me, and I don't want to get into the process, because you got to have, as Michelle referred to as a criteria. But you have 3 piles in front of you. One is like really quick because we can get it through. We have another one that's got high return, but it's going to take a long time, even if we want to expedite it. We got another one that's got a medium return, but medium amount of time. So the staff are going to have to determine where we can get some quick wins here, because I think the goal is based on the economic dislocation we're going to be experiencing. I think the number 1 priority has got to be speed. Like, how much can we get out and how quickly can we get it out? And then from there, determine the higher priority ones that may take a little bit more time. So I will leave that to staff to figure that out. But I think one of the criteria has got to be speed and as close to shovel ready as possible.
Okay. All right. So we'll just leave that as direction to staff and come back in 2 weeks. I just want to make one comment, and that is, I'm just surprised that we haven't done this already. If we have an open pipeline to all the municipalities, so it's something that I think is an easy thing to do, and I think it's a great idea that we're bringing it forward. But I'm surprised that we don't have that kind of information already. And what else? Do we have someone else? Councillor Zhao, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, without being repetitive, I kind of see these meetings as a lot more executionable. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I think the urgency needs to be greater than this. I don't want to watch staff presentations. And I know that you guys need to explain these things to us. I'm trying so desperately to be diplomatic, but I feel the sense of urgency in the business community. And maybe I have this because they still contact me all the time, but the urgency is so great right now for them to find recovery. I think I think you guys have to feel really empowered here, like really empowered to dig deep into those files and say, you know what, I'm bringing these 5 and we're gonna and just kind of let us support you in pushing them into some way to be executionable. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that the right way to do it?
I think that works for me. And I think the message doesn't seem to be getting out, but this is really all hands on deck. And I think if you look at the economic statement the federal government put out yesterday, I mean, we're running close to what depression time. So I really think that we all have to kind of put our heads together and try to keep moving forward on this stuff and keep these businesses alive and keep things going on and keep money coming into our coffers as well. So let's just leave it at that. Thank you very much. Rod, you're good with that? In 2 weeks, we can come back with a bit more of a strategy.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And yeah, 2 weeks. No more. Okay. Okay. Mr. Dyer is next. And Mr. Dyer is going to give us a property tax policy review 101. And I would just say to you, Craig, that a lot of this stuff in these slide decks, I think we already know. So I'm wondering if there's some way we can just cut to the chase, the nuts and the bolts, and give us our current status and projections. Is that fair, committee? Or do you want to go through the whole thing on how we formulate policy and all the other stuff? We're all kind of seasoned politicians. I don't see any. I can't see even in the screen. So is there any kind of are we lagging here or what?
Just hang on a second. I'm just trying to get the file shared.
Okay. So I can't see everybody, but is that kind of a good consensus? Can everybody just say yes or no? Committee members? I can't hear anybody.
I agree with you.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jeff. I think that it just stems from Helen's comment too. So thank you.
Yeah.
I agree,
Okay.
Jeff.
Okay. All right. So very briefly, Mr. Dyer, the nuts and bolts and the current situation and your projections, if you would.
Yeah, so I'm just, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to think of the best way to be as and effective with the committee time as possible. So I'll come through, I'll walk through some of this very quickly. I think everyone maybe understands the responsibilities. I think it's important to understand that it's really important to understand the difference between the budget process, the tax policy process. So through the budget, you establish your user fees, your property tax levy, all those things. The tax policy piece ultimately determines who pays what. Mm-hmm. And so what I've tried to lay out through the balance of this slide deck is, what opportunities may lie within the tax policy realm for the committee to consider. And just back to a previous comment, I would say, we put this in front of we put this kind of information in front of council every year because we go through the tax policy process every year. So what you're going to hear is there's not very much else that you can do within the tax policy realm that doesn't have impacts on various sectors of the community. So there's the summary. I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk about I'm going to just do a short explanation of tax ratios because that's one of the items that you could consider. And so this process has been in place since 1998. The residential class has a ratio of 1, and every other class is a ratio relative to residential. Okay, I'm going to show you the numbers in a second, but that's an important piece. Tax ratios apply to regional and local taxes, but not education taxes. And we establish them every year. We'll leave out the ranges of fairness just for the moment. We can come back to it if we need to. This chart shows what our tax ratios have been since inception in 1998. And there's, I'd say, one major message here, which is over a period of time in the 2000s, regional council decided that commercial, industrial, multi-res should all have the same ratio. And so those ratios were adjusted downward over multiple years until 2010, when at that point, the ratio was 1.95 for each of those classes. And the way to interpret this is the taxes, the tax rates for commercial, industrial, and multi-res are 1.95 times the tax rates for residential. So almost twice the rate. Okay, and I'm going to show you the math in just a second of how that works. This just shows how the ratios have come down over time. So this is an important slide because it's important to understand where we are relative to other areas in the province. So the region in 2019 and in 2020 as well has a multi-res, commercial, and industrial ratio of 1.95. In 2019, that was a bit higher than the provincial average, a bit more for multi-res, even a little bit higher on the commercial side, and below the provincial average for industrial. And all three relatively comparable with the median. Okay, so that's how we place ourselves regionally, across the province. And again, this applies to upper tier and lower tier classes. I'll skip over these. You can refer to them as you need to.
Okay, Craig, Councillor Strickland has to leave at 2:00, so I'm wondering, I know he does have a question. Can we just cut to that if it's okay? I don't like to interrupt you, but are you good with that?
Sorry. Can we cut to Councillor Strickland's question?
Yes.
Oh, of course.
He has to leave. Okay,
oh, of course.
Very good. Councillor Strickland.
Sorry, folks, and I appreciate your latitude. Craig, what I'm wondering is, and as the chairman alluded to from the beginning, we've been dealing with these reports on a yearly basis for as long as we've all been in politics, and we understand how one's eyes kind of glaze over when you talk about tax policy. The big thing to think about, obviously, is anything you do to change a ratio is going to be borne by the residential class, which makes it challenging. What I'm wondering is this slide here. That's where I was going. Is on the if we wanted to provide some relief, either to the industrial class or commercial, I noticed that some municipalities created more classes. I saw there's a slide there when we reviewed it around creating different classes. Would that be an option? Would that be a way in which we could provide some relief but minimize the impact on the residential class?
Well, so through you, Mr. Chair, so the Act limits the type of, limits the optional classes that are available to you. So on the commercial side, you can create an optional class for office buildings, for shopping centers, and for parking lots. And on the industrial class, you can create a separate optional class for large industrial. And the Assessment Act provides definitions of what would fall into each of those potential classes. The challenge is, as you've indicated, if I just go back to this, slide, here's the point I was going to make on this slide is, as you go, so what this shows is the distribution of regional property taxes in 2020, if you adjust the commercial industrial ratios from 195 to 185. So what happens is the commercial and industrial tax classes get a tax break. In this case, in the tune of $5.5 million. And then what happens to that $5.5 million? Most of it goes to the residential property class.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, that there's no change in taxes overall.
Right.
So taking that same analogy, if you create optional classes, create a lower ratio for them, the same thing is going to happen. You're going to shift classes, you're going to shift taxes onto every other class of property. And so I think you have to decide is, do you want to provide tax relief for office buildings, shopping centers, and parking lots, or to large industrial properties at the expense of every other commercial, industrial, and residential class? That's your challenge from a tax policy perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Establish the levy, and now you've just got to figure out how to collect it.
Right. So, and I know it's complicated because now you have this cascading effect, because residential property class owners are being affected by economic slowdown. So are industrial and shopping malls and so on as well. But how do we strike the balance between trying to create an environment that might lead to more job creation, but not unduly tax the residential property owner that much more? And that's why I was wondering if you created some additional classes, but at the end of the day, it's the mathematics, it's a zero-sum game. So even if you created additional classes, whatever ratio you put that at, and if it's below the existing classes, that's got to be borne by the residential tax base.
So that's correct, Councillor Strickland. But more to the point, if you create an optional class and put a lower ratio to it, the taxes are going to be borne by every other property in the region,
right?
Including other commercial and industrial properties
that are not in that class by virtue of creating a new class.
Yes, exactly. Because you've effectively lowered the weighted assessment, and so you increase residential tax rate, and every other rate is simply math applied to the residential tax rate. So if you're looking for something to do, my recommendation from all this is you need to advocate to the province to do something about business education tax rates. Because look at this slide on slide 29 here. On the residential side, and when we've said this through multiple budgets, it makes up about half of the residential tax bill. And the local municipalities make up, in this case, about 36%. Education is 13%. On the commercial side, education taxes is the largest component of the tax bill. Mm-hmm. And so if there's anything that we would recommend coming out of this review of tax policy is some advocacy, because we know that the province is reviewing the tax system and the assessment system, and they are in the process. I'm going to go back one slide here. If you look right down at the bottom, you can see, I've just got to move something here. The business education tax target in 2020 was 0.98%, and the ceiling is 125, and the ceiling is where the region is at right now. And you'll see if you go back to this slide, look at that commercial column, the second one from the right, and look how those education tax rates compare in Waterloo, York, Peel, Niagara, and Halton. Right? So we're higher than all of them. And the province is in the process of gradually reducing business education taxes. But at this point, the region is at the high end. In fact, we're at the maximum. If you look at the top row and the bottom row, they're both 1.29% in 2019.
Okay.
So again, the main recommendation coming out of this, out of our review of tax policy, which we look at in depth every year, would be for the committee to advocate to the province of Ontario to expedite the reduction of business education taxes in 2021. That would have an immediate benefit for all commercial and industrial properties and saves you from trying to benefit one particular sector over any other.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would be prepared to support a recommendation, but I can make the motion. I have to, unfortunately, I have to leave, but I would support a recommendation if the committee wanted to put one forward with respect to these business education taxes. And I have some more questions related to that, but in principle, that seems to make sense. And given the limited maneuverability we have in creating new classes or shifting, tax ratios, the cascading effect on the residential homeowner, I think, is too great. And you might be solving one problem a little bit, but we're creating more of another problem. So unless we have some more analysis of those tax ratios and a much deeper discussion, I'm not sure there's much we can do on there, but I certainly would support this resolution here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Well, well, the committee will take it from here if you have to leave, and we'll see if we can get that passed.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
My apologies.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Councillor Jowett, Colin.
Okay, so in the interest of time, sorry, I just wanted to toss a problem out there that, Craig, hopefully you can help us find a way through it. So when the federal government came out with all of these brilliant loans for people, by the way, the $2,000 loan that's out there is literally stalling the labor market because people don't want to go back to work. We're having we're having trouble attracting people back to work. That's one part of the challenge, but to just further try to paint you a picture of what I'm hearing. So the $40,000 loan that went to business owners, all they had to do was prove that they had less sales in February than they did in January. Almost anybody could have done that. Now, what they didn't do was so that $40,000 loan, it's 5 years, low interest, and if you pay it back by 2025, you get to keep $10,000. I mean, wow. Anyway, they never connected that loan into people paying rent. And then they turned around and said, they put a moratorium on evictions. So there's an entire commercial band there that is going to, they're going to start losing their shirt because people are not paying their rent, and it would have been such an easy thing. So, I'll be honest with you. Is this a public session? Is this open to the public?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So I just want to be careful, but Marwin was working on this. He understood this was a significant gap. And I just don't know where we stand with it, but I think we're going to start seeing a lot of problems because of that. So it's just something, I know you can't solve all the problems, but if you could help us find a way to advocate for some of that somehow, because property taxes have been deferred, but if you're never getting that rent back, you're never paying that. There are going to be people that are going to struggle with the property taxes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dyer, what kind of advocacy group do you have, you and the other treasurers across Ontario? Do you meet? Do you talk about this stuff? I mean, I'm sure you do, but I mean, the political is one way, but also, the professionals getting together and talking about this it's a little different as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Mr. Chair. So yes, I participate in the Ontario Regional Single Tier Treasurers group, we've been meeting every week for the last 4 months. And, we talk about, a range of issues from property taxes to development charges to user fees to change to the Municipal Act and everything in between. There's also the Municipal Finance Officers Association that, is an advocacy group on behalf of municipalities. And, certainly if there were resolutions that this committee wished to pass, those are certainly resolutions that can be forwarded to the province, to AMO, to MFOA, and to any other number of groups to assist in the advocacy.
Okay.
Is this the first time you've heard of this problem, Craig, or have they discussed it with you?
Oh, sorry. It's absolutely not the first time we've heard of this problem. We know that the province has been over time, and we could show you a history of how education tax rates have changed. They are in the process of bringing down the higher business education tax rates in the province. The question, I suppose, is it fast enough? Are there opportunities to make it faster? And again, as I said, this would have the obvious benefit of accruing to all commercial industrial properties across the region.
Okay. So you said you have some recommendations that besides this one that Councillor Strickland was talking about, you have others as well that your group are going to put forward, or maybe I heard you wrong?
So at this point, we don't have any specific recommendations to give to the province. We've spoken to them about this issue in the past. There's no reason we can't revive it. And that's something that I can easily do as soon as tomorrow afternoon at our next meeting.
Okay. Well, I think that would be very worthwhile to do.
Okay. Consider it done.
I don't see any other hands, but maybe we can read back what Councillor Strickland had suggested. Does somebody have that? And maybe we can have council take a look at that.
Yeah,
if the committee supports it.
It's probably close to the first bullet on slide 30.
Yes. Okay. Okay, someone prepared to move that? We can have that go back to council and they can take a look at it.
Chair, I will second.
Okay, I think Helen wants to move it, and Michael, you'll second it.
Sure.
All in favor? Everybody just wave. We're good. Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Craig. Are we good? I mean, it's a great slide deck, and I see all that information. We've all kind of heard it before, but I think as we mentioned earlier, all hands on deck. Anything else you can come up with over the next couple of weeks is we're really looking for new ideas and different ways how we can bring some relief. So I think if council supports this, that would be a good advocacy, and I think also the treasurers need to get behind it. We need to have a little bit of common sense on this stuff, right? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next issue is Laura Phillips, Communications Coordinator, Economic Development, provided an overview of the proposed community engagement strategy as developed by staff. Is Laura there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so yeah, we're kind of looking at brevity on these things. So if you could just give us a brief update, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So I was asked to put together a communication strategy for you to help support the public meeting that will be happening next week from 1 to 3 p.m. to help get the word out to businesses that the meeting will be happening and that you guys are anxious to hear feedback on ways that we can be assisting the community in terms of economic recovery. So the document, I will just share it here. Go. Perfect. So, I mean, I think the background and summary, I will skip through that, as you are all aware of kind of what is happening there. In terms of the proposed format, so what we're talking about here is Councillor Strickland will be moderating the session. We've talked about developing a brief slide deck to start the session off, overviewing kind of the description of the committee here, the actions that you've been taking so far to support economic recovery, and then opening it up to delegations to provide feedback and input. So in terms of promoting this, the clerk's office has placed an ad in the record, and there's going to be a public notice, so that will be in the record tomorrow, and there's going to be a public notice also placed on the region's website tomorrow. So that is kind of the typical advertising that we would do for a normal kind of committee or council meeting. But to increase awareness around this one specifically, I'd also like to suggest 2 additional components. So first is the social media campaign. We could start promotion probably as July 9th is today. Obviously, that's not going to quite work, but we could start tomorrow, no problem. In terms of getting promotion out, we can leverage both regional social media accounts and our partner social media accounts from the Best WR initiative. So that includes all of the local chambers, Communitech, Waterloo EDC, as well as the municipal economic development offices. So what I will do is create a few social media posts along with an image, and then share those out to that group to help promote registration. And the second piece that I'm recommending here is that we do a written email invitation to local businesses asking for their input and participation as well. We did this for the public town hall that happened with Dr. Wong a couple weeks ago, and it went over very well, and I'd like to recommend the same format. So what we had was Matthew Chandy sent out an email on behalf of the regional office of economic development, and sent them out to kind of the local BIAs, the chambers, shopping centers, and I can certainly show you that list if you're interested in seeing the groups that we would send that email out to, and then ask them for obviously to come in and to consult with you all and give you their input.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Joe?
Or did you say me?
Yes.
Thanks,
Helen.
Jeff. It just bounced a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Laura, nice to meet you. Are you our point person for communication to the business community, etc., on masks and everything economic recovery?
Yes, I believe so. I'll defer to Rod a little bit on that one, but yes, I've been asked to support the communications for the committee.
Okay, so in the interest of time, and you're the only communications person here, I want to be able to uncover a bit of a challenge, and I think we set the date as July 13th for masks to be,
Yes.
in the public,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I believe that there's a gap here because I'm getting, because of my previous life, you might not know it, but I had an HR business. I'm getting inundated with, oh my God, what, like questions like you wouldn't believe, right from how do I do my marriage vows with a mask on to, like it's a huge, and I direct people to the region's site. But once business gets a hold of it, they have a different nuance to try and understand. So I'm being invited to all these Zoom meetings to generate clarity around this piece, which is the public is part of a business dealing with our policy, but then the complicated other side of this is the Health and Safety Act,
Absolutely.
which governs employees. And so I'm trying to conceptually get them to understand that it's going to be similar, but the province hasn't really clarified that in the Health and Safety Act, which would be the most obvious place to put it, right? And so, I think given that the time is coming, I'm already getting emails of I can't de-escalate people; they're getting angry and divisive, and so. I mean, even the Chamber of Commerce, we did a big Zoom yesterday, and Greg and I are gonna do a de-escalation video. And I feel like as we have a full communication department and we have a social services department, and there's so much talent that could do a much better job than myself and the current chair of the chamber. He's a great guy, but I think we could be doing that. And I did mention it early on in the process that I thought we need to kind of give them a toolbox for this. So I'm hoping you can take those concerns back, and we can actually maybe, instead of just posting everything on our website, start pushing it out through the business associations, the HR association, the home builders association. Like, what's wrong with us pushing information out so that, because, when people are in the throes of reacting to stuff like this, I don't know that they're going to think of us as being the place to find information all the time, not at the detail level with which they're interested. Mm-hmm. So I think we, and I'm not being critical, because I know we did this thing pretty quick, although some people think it took too long. Anyway, I think we're late in the game, and I think we have to kind of respond a little bit more aggressively with some serious communication on it. Now, that is absolutely means no offense to anyone. It's just I'm reacting to the information that's coming to me, and I think we have a chance to get it in front of it.
Councillor Lorenz, okay. Chair Lorenz.
Yes. Yeah. I see you there, Rod. Go ahead.
Through you, Chair Lorenz. I guess what I would suggest, Councillor Jowett, is that we can take this back to Matthew Chandy and Sandy Stevens with Public Health. They have been running a regular update to the business communities, including all of the business organizations, the BIAs and WRTMC, et cetera, et cetera. They've been meeting almost weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, with those organizations in order to support them through the COVID management process. And that's the right venue for us to push this information out. And it's very effective. Like Laura was saying, 2 weeks ago, they set up a similar forum to allow the medical officer to brief the business community. Worked very well, and this should be not a difficult thing for us to do. So we'll bring that information back to Matthew and Sandy and see if we can tee something up. And
I love that, Rod. Instead of us being a passive resource, like let's breathe a bunch of life into this so that they feel a little bit more equipped. And I'll do that de-escalation video, and it'll be kind of half-ish. But if I could get from regional staff that they could put something together that would be, I think the business community would really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Laura, we can circle around on this afterwards.
And just to let you know, this morning, I know you don't want not everything on our website, like people coming to us, but in terms of pushing things out, there was a new page launched this morning around face masks for businesses. It's got a bunch of resources on it, printable stickers and posters for the local businesses. And now that that's created, we're in the process of getting it out as well. So I can also loop back with corporate communications on their efforts to find out what other ways we can be getting those resources out to the business, in addition to the meeting that Rod mentioned.
Yeah, I'm on it now, Laura, and I see that we're really developing it. I just think where government gets it wrong is we create all this information, but we make everybody come and get it. And, right now the business community is so fragile. Like, we just have to, if we can take some steps out of things, I think that's just us doing our jobs a little bit better, eh? Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Helen. So one of the things that I've always kind of wondered is, instead of reinventing the wheel, are we looking what other municipalities are doing across Canada, how to reach out to the business community, or especially the municipalities that have passed mask bylaws now? Are we looking at, picking the best pieces out of that, or just seeing what they're doing and using that instead of trying to come up with our own strategy?
So we definitely have been taking a look at the other municipalities and taking a look at what they've been doing in terms of web presence and social media presence. On top of that, we definitely are looking at the best practices and trying to bring those in. But I'd say that's about as far as it's gone from my knowledge.
Okay, well, I think it's probably a work in process. It's going to be, we may be in this for a long haul, so That's the problem. It's just like wallpapering. When you're finished, you're really good at it. So hopefully we can keep on away at that. Does anybody else have any questions for Laura or for Roddens? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee or anything they want to say before we move on? Okay, so I would just say to you that we're meeting next Thursday at July 16th. It's going to be a public meeting. It'll start at 1 and it will run to 3. Chair Strickland will be chairing it. So we've been advised that in response to the special limitations that we sent out to the Waterloo Regional Home Builders Association, both Chambers of Commerce, Communitech, and the Grand Valley Construction Association, we have confirmations of delegations only from the home builders and from the KW Chamber. The Grand Valley Construction Association said they will not be sending anyone. So I think we need to beat the bushes a little bit, Helen, and see if we can get more people responding and people getting involved from the business sector, because we're trying to make things happen, and it's pretty hard when you don't get good input from people that are having the problems.
So Laura, can you send me the collateral and I'll put it out through my channels as well? And if it means, I think that would do more benefit than waiting for someone we think will do it. Yeah. I think if we all send it out, because we all have business contacts, every one of us do. Right. And if we start pushing it out, it might help.
Absolutely.
I think the BIAs as well, I think is important. Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds like teamwork to me. Anything else that anybody wants to add?
I don't know. Would you be interested in seeing the list of folks that we will be sending that out to?
You can send us that. Sure, that would be great.
Sure. Perfect. I can quickly share it here if you're. So this is the contacts that we have here, just quickly for your review. We've got all of the main shopping areas, the municipal economic development offices, the local BIAs, hotel and tourism, and then the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, send that to us if you can, or to Stevie, and then we'll make sure that everybody gets it. And that should probably go to all members of council, so they're aware, because it's just not us; it's everybody on this council that are kind of dealing with all of this. So I think that would be really important, and we can encourage them to make contacts and make sure that we have good representation. I think that would really be good. Okay,
Jeff, can I ask a question?
Sure, you sure can, Carl.
Laura just showed the list there, and under the list, under the shopping plazas, I didn't see the Cambridge Mall in there. Was that?
No, it wasn't. I can try and get the contact for that.
Okay, thanks.
And I would suggest if there's something there that is missing, you can contact Laura, or if you have additional information, we can expand the list. And I really think that's when we're in such a high-tech age, it still is really hard to try to communicate messages to people, especially if we send emails out and people just look at it and that's another 30 they just got. So I think personal contact would really help. So anybody out there that sees this, we can, and someone that's missing, let's get them on the list and let's see if we can get them to participate. Okay, so we'll move for a motion. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Sue. Go ahead.
Just wanted to say that if we're going to send this out to council, we also need to send out an explanation to them about what it is, just a brief about what we're attempting to do, because I think some of them will be very interested.
Yeah, well, I think we can send it out to all councils,
yes,
right across the region. Yeah, just so everybody's aware. But definitely, we're all in this together. There's no question. Good suggestion. Okay, so it's moved by Michael Harris and seconded by Helen Jowett that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for people that participated online.
Great meeting, Jeff.
Thank you. We try to do our best. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.